Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new segment from Perfect Madness Wrestling. My name is Chris Daria, and I have been known to be the walking wrestling encyclopedia of Perfect Madness Wrestling, so you can call me the WWE of PMW, but don't actually call me that because I don't want to meet Triple H or his sledgehammer under these circumstances. Rather meet him as a fan and not as a defendant. So yeah, that's going to be perfect. Now you've seen me on the original Perfect Madness Wrestling a few times, the podcast, a few other things, but you've never seen me with glasses. And if I'm wearing glasses, you know what that means. It's time to go back to school. Now, it may be July. I know this. It's still summer. Well, I know it's summer because I live in Texas. It's freaking hot outside. But it is never the wrong time to get a little bit of learning. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting a brand new segment of Perfect Madness Wrestling that I'm calling Wrestling History 101. Because when you're a wrestling fan, there is so much to look back on, so much to talk about that's happening right now, so much to think about that happened then. In order to understand what is happening now, a lot of times you have to look at what happened then. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a topic. I'm going to try to do this either each week or every other week where I take a topic and I try to look at the history of it. Take that topic all the way from when it started to where it is right now. If it is still happening now. If it isn't still happening now, take it all the way to the end. You know, that whole deal. If you would like me to do a topic, if you like the idea, leave your comments below in the comments page on the YouTube channel. Leave your comments on our Facebook page. Leave your comments on the website. Leave your comments in the air, wherever you want to leave them. Skywrite something for me. I'll probably see it. I have good vision. That's what these glasses are for. So that's what we're going to do. Today's topic, I figured I would start our very first lesson today with one of the most interesting topics to think about in the modern era. And it's not really a topic, but a person. Today's lesson is entitled The Life and Career of John Cena. Yes, the face that runs the place has been a very charismatic and often polarizing figure in the world of professional wrestling. There are many who appreciate the work that he's done as a top-level champion for WWE, both in the ring and out of it, and there are some who believe that his character has gone stale for the better part of a decade and that they want to see either him away or him do something completely different. And while all that is true, it's still see it today. And one of the reason why I'm doing John Cena now is because I watched Battleground and I enjoyed his match with Kevin Owens. And a little part of me was almost expecting Kevin Owens to win that match. And as if you did not watch it, it's been 2 days, so I'm not really spoiling anything in this day and age. You can see it on the internet. Anywhere you go, you just type in John Cena Battleground and it'll say, spoiler, he won, or whatever it is. And so you know that he won that match, and people are decrying that in anger, furiously shaking their fists, pounding away at their keyboards with the caps lock on. Why did John Cena win? Shouting all sorts of expletives and trolling the night away on the internet. Why did John Cena win? Why didn't we give it to Kevin Owens? It's his time. It is right now. And I don't think there's been a performer, a wrestler, an athlete, whatever you want to call him, that gets that kind of reaction since John Cena. Or other than John Cena, I don't think we've seen it before. I don't think we're going to see it again. And I was pondering this reaction. I was thinking, well, how did it get to be this way? How did it get to be where John Cena can be such a big match player and still get this crazy reaction? Well, in order to answer that question, we've got to go all the way back. We've got to go way to the way back in the year 2002. Yes, all the way back 15 years ago. 2002, the Invasion had just ended. Triple H was your undisputed heavyweight champion. That's what it was called back then. And there was a class of newcomers that was coming up. You might recognize some of these names: Randy Orton, Dave Batista, Brock Lesnar, and one John Cena. They were all part of this famed class in OVW. Now, in OVW, John Cena was working on a character named the Prototype. The Prototype was this hybrid, half-man, half-cyborg robot dude that was chiseled out of granite and could mess you up, and he talked very well. His haircut was incredibly stupid, but that's really the only thing that was wrong with it. And he was working on this character, and this character was probably going to be what got him to the main roster. However, something a little similar to what we have now with NXT. However, the character never made it. And that is because when we saw John Cena, the John Cena we were given in about May of 2002, believe it was either May or June, sometime around there. The first introduction we had to John Cena was an open challenge laid out by Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle laid out this open challenge. Now, we found out later on during Chris Jericho's live podcast on the network with Cena that the reason this match even took place is because The Undertaker was unable to make an event and wrestle Kurt Angle at this event, at this SmackDown that he was supposed to wrestle at. That's from the words of John Cena himself, so you know I did my research on that one. There you go. When it comes to that sort of thing, when it comes to this, he wasn't really supposed to be there. He might have been a few months, even a year, or who knows if he would have been called up. But the kid was ready to go, according to Vince and Paul Heyman and the writers back then. And so that's what he did. He went out, he answered the open challenge, claimed that he had ruthless aggression, as said by Vince McMahon, and proceeded to almost last 5 minutes with Kurt Angle, a decorated champion. It was a great way to introduce him. He got a lot of support from folks backstage. Rikishi, Billy Kidman, The Undertaker, all kind of got taken under their wing. The debuting Rey Mysterio forged an alliance with him as well to take on folks like Chris Jericho and folks like Kurt Angle. Actually, his first major win on SmackDown and in the WWE was against Chris Jericho, which I believe happened at Vengeance. So that Vengeance was that is when it happened. I believe that was a July pay-per-view. And once Chris Jericho left, there wasn't really very much for him to do. He kind of settled down and began becoming a regular on Velocity, which for those of you who don't remember Velocity was a Saturday night wrestling program that aired on, I think, Spike TV every Saturday night at 10 o'clock, and it was basically what Superstars is now. Kind of a few matches, an hour of wrestling, a few matches from SmackDown, and a bunch of recap of what was happening on the show. This was back in the brand extension days, people, when you had two distinct brands, two distinct champions, two distinct rosters. And you had the Raw equivalent of Heat, and SmackDown had Velocity. And he was on Velocity for quite a bit. And as his own admission, this was because while he could wrestle at that time, while he could prove that he can go and he had that ruthless aggression, that was really all his character was. He was the ruthless aggression guy. He was the wacky roll-up guy. He didn't even have a finishing move for like the first year of his WWE career. Now, most people get them because that helps establish their identity. He didn't have one. His finishing move was a switch between a sunset flip, an Oklahoma roll, a schoolboy, a small package, any other major roll-up pinning combination that you can think of. A victory roll was thrown in there a few times, but that sort of thing. He wasn't defined. He wore boots and tights. Yes, there was a day when John Cena did not wear jean shorts. He wore tights. And the only really thing that you could say about the tights is he tried to match the color of his tights and his boots to the home team of whatever city he was in. If he was in New York or kind of performing around the East Rutherford area, he'd probably wear either blue and red or green and white for the Giants or the Jets. If he was in Dallas, he'd probably wear silver and blue for the Cowboys. If he was in Minnesota, he might do a little red, white, and blue for the Twins, or a little purple and gold for the Vikings, something like that. So that was basically the extent of his character. Roll-ups, aggression, and different colored tights. Not much to really build off of, right? And thankfully, that began to change come the fall. What we saw on television in the fall was John Cena dressed up on a Halloween special like Vanilla Ice. This is the famed Halloween special where Eric Bischoff, general manager of Raw, kissed Stephanie McMahon, general manager of SmackDown, and then nothing happened after that. But something did happen after John Cena appeared as the Vanilla Ice character and kind of did his Vanilla Ice impression with that weird giant wig that looked like, I don't even know what. It looked like a giant Nike swoosh just turned upside down and stuck on his head with a whole mess of gel. That sort of thing. And in story, what we saw was John Cena team with one of his supporters, Billy Kidman, in a tag team tournament to crown the new WWE Tag Team Champions. Because during this brand extension, They're different. They were trying to establish different identities for both brands. And Raw had the tag team championships at the time, the World Tag Team Championships. So SmackDown was like, okay, we're going to create our own. Here is the WWE Tag Team Championship. No world, just the WWE Tag Team Championship. They had a tournament to establish how awesome this was going to be. While the tournament was eventually won by Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle in what has been one of the better iterations of an odd couple tag team, and that sparked a great three-way feud with Los Guerreros and Edge and Rey Mysterio, really establishing those guys. John Cena and Billy Kidman did not fare too well. I think they were out in the first round. And after that was over, he turned on Billy Kidman, John Cena did, and officially established himself as a heel after about a 3-4 month run as a nondescript wacky roll-up guy babyface. So that's all. So now the stage is set for what has become one of the most popular aspects of John Cena's character known as the Doctor of Thugonomics. See, he started freestyle rapping in this Vanilla Ice costume party thing that he threw. So, and people took notice of that. People took notice of him freestyle rapping on tours, on the buses, on the cars, on the way to different events in the hotel. He would just do this because why not? Freestyle rapping is fun. I've done it before. I may not look like I have, but I have. And it's a lot of fun, especially if you know how to do it. And according to John, this was something he just did in high school because he's such a hip-hop head. And like they say, the best characters in wrestling are yourselves turned up to 11. So The Rock really is somewhat of a jockey, comedian kind of guy. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a redneck. When he turns it up to 11, he's flipping off everybody, drinking beer, and dropping stunners on people. CM Punk is straight edge. When he turns it up to 11, he is better than you because he's straight edge. John Cena, as a white rapper, is John Cena, the hip-hop fan, turned up way to 11. Way, way, way to 11. And he would just try all sorts of ridiculous stuff. He came to the ring wearing those Nikes with the pump ups in the shoe there, the tongue of the shoe. He would be wearing jean shorts. He wore different jerseys every week. He would backwards hats, chains, little doodads, brass knuckles, little knuckles on his wrists that said "Word Life" on them. And every promo he gave was in the form of a rap. He would give promos that rhymed, usually ended with an expletive that I can't say on this show, where he would make the audience hold up or whatever he did. He would just do all of these outlandish things and just be this sort of b-boy, be this hip-hop guy, but take that to the level where he is the Doctor of Thugonomics. He is so confident in his abilities that he is going to not only destroy you physically, but verbally as well by giving you a beat-down battle rap. And he saw some great moments throughout 2003. They tried him out with a few tag teams where a wrestler known as Bull Buchanan, who eventually became B-Squared, became his heavy. Then Red Dog, a lesser-known heavy of his, who eventually became Rodney Mack, if anyone remembers that performer pairing up with Theodore Long back in the day. But eventually it was decided he's better off as a solo guy. And so that's exactly what he did. He was wrestling solo, just going out to the ring. He rapped his own theme music. Basic Thugonomics was written by him and performed by him. He would go out and rap and do all these things. He had feuds. He was getting back into the top of the mid card there, almost at the top of the card. He had a championship match it was either Backlash or Judgment Day 2003, probably Judgment Day because that was a SmackDown pay-per-view, with Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, because that was the belt on SmackDown at the time. He had matches with The Undertaker. He had feuds with Kurt Angle again. He kind of helped jumpstart Spanky. If I remember Spanky / Brian Kendrick, he kind of helped with that. He was always floating around that era with this character of just coming out, trash-talking in battle rap form, wearing ridiculous threads, naming his moves things like the throwback, the FU. That's where the FU came from. The FU came from his feud against Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar had the F5, so he's going to take it and turn it into the FU, which is what he does now is the attitude adjustment. So you get this guy, and the fans are eating it alive. First they're booing him, and then they realize, oh my gosh, he's amazing. This character is so good that he is. I can't be angry with him, even though he's technically a bad guy. I can't. He won numerous awards that year from wrestling fan sites and legit wrestling places like the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards, the RSPW Awards, which are now called the Thezzies. He won Best Gimmick for like so many different things. So people knew that this was working, and he was able to find his identity as this rapper, as this kind of guy. And it eventually got so popular. What happens when a heel gets popular? We know this all the time in wrestling. You got to turn him back to face because the fans want to cheer for him. But you get it. But the trick is not to change too much, not to make him too much of a smiley guy, but to still give him that edge. Not Adam Copeland, a different kind of edge. Kind of edge that Stone Cold Steve Austin had when he went from being a out-and-out heel to an anti-hero babyface feuding against Vince McMahon. That's the kind of edge you want when you're this kind of brash, outgoing, explicit character. And he kept it. He decided to become in storyline, he changed his tune and became someone the fans could cheer for when in his feuds with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon were kind of forming up something. Big Show was a part of that. Kurt Angle was used to be a part of that and then defected. Then you had A-Train, who was a part of that, and then they introduced two new guys, Nathan Jones and Matt Morgan, who eventually, the five of those formed up a team for Survivor Series. And Angle, who was feuding with Brock at the time, needed something to answer that with. And John Cena became the answer, became one of the five on his team. And they wanted that to happen, and that's kind of what happened. That's how we turned face. He's like, you know what, I'm tired of you guys don't appreciate what I'm doing. I'm going to go over here and fight you guys. And his team wound up winning. That cemented him as a face. He was a baby face. And from then until now, he has not been a heel since that time. 2004, 2005, the beginning of that were great years for John Cena. It was a great period to be John Cena. He had his first ever WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 20, opening the show against the Big Show in a match for the newly minted United States Championship. See, Raw had the Intercontinental Championship as a mid-card title, so SmackDown needed something, so they revived the old U.S. title, which came from the NWA and WCW. It was a big thing. Harley Race, Ric Flair, Sting, you know the drill. Everyone's held that title, all major folks in the NWA and in WCW. And it was that tournament was won by Eddie Guerrero, and the title was taken from him by the Big Show. And so then you get John Cena coming in, still as a brash rapper, but now directing his raps at the Big Show. A memorable segment where the Big Show tried that shtick and didn't, and then John Cena just crushed him for it. So that's always the fun stuff there. He was very smooth. He was actually pretty musically inclined for someone who spent most of his time in athletics. So I'm very, very impressed with him when it comes to that sort of thing. But he won, and with that won his first ever singles title at this event. And the fans are loving it. They're loving that he cheated. He used his chain wrapped around his fist to knock the Big Show loopy, set him up for the FU, and he won. Madison Square Garden ate that up. And he kept that going with the U.S. title. And he eventually incorporated the U.S. title into his gimmick. It became a part of him so much during this time period. Because this was the start of the John Cena spinner belt. He put a spinner on the U.S. title, where it would spin around and around like a turntable would, kept it as a part of his gimmick, and just incorporated that piece into it. And he would go on to have a great year. He would feud for that title on and off pretty much the entire year, as a staple of the mid-card, as the champion of the mid-card, while the top was being overcrowded with Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle and The Undertaker and Big Show and John Bradshaw Layfield, who that's a name we'll get to later on. But in this time period, his feuds were mostly with some more mid-cardy type folks, people like the newly debuting on SmackDown as a solo act, Rene Dupree, or Charlie Haas, or these kind of mid-card guys that can get good wrestling matches out of him, which they generally did. Some of his major feuds in this time were Booker T, which he had a best-of-7 series with for the U.S. title, which he won, and the debuting Carlito Caribbean Cool, if you remember Carlito with his apples in his hair, who beat John Cena for the U.S. title on his debut in the company. So that set up something big, and of course it led to a really ridiculous feud where they had to get John Cena out to film The Marine by saying that his bodyguard Jesus stabbed him at a nightclub, and he doesn't have a scar on his back and his kidneys, so whatever. But it still made for some good action. It still gave him something to do, which was great. And he became so popular and so valued by the company, popular with the fans, valued by the company. He became so big, he was at the point ready to make that jump, ready to jump to the top level. And how was he going to do that? With the Royal Rumble. Started Royal Rumble 2005. If you remember correctly, this was the Royal Rumble which Batista won only after they restarted the match. And they restarted the match because both Batista and John Cena fell out at the exact same time. The referees did not know who won, and McMahon restarted that part of the match with just those two until they had a winner, and that winner happened to be Batista. McMahon also blew his quads out during this match, but that's another story for another day. So with that set up that way, we needed a #1 contender for JBL's title. Insert John Cena. And it became a wonderful contrast, because John Cena not only has this thugonomics character where he's rapping and dissing everybody he's going up against, but he's got this kind of anti-hero segment to him, a little bit to something similar like Stone Cold had. Not the exact same, but definitely he was a guy that presented himself as someone that your average fan can get behind, which contrasted beautifully with what JBL was bringing to the table. Before 2004, JBL was a beer-swilling redneck, similar to Austin again, who was full of Texas pride and was part of the APA, a mercenary for hire tag team with Farouk, that got paid in money and beer and would drink, smoke cigars, and gamble any time they weren't working. Sometimes when they were working, they would do that. After this, JBL completely reforms himself into a rich conservative businessman in the mold of a Donald Trump meets J.R. Ewing from Dallas, to create this character with the limo with the long horns on it and a cabinet full of supporters like Orlando Jordan and the Basham brothers and Jillian Hall. And he had this great support system around him that basically did his dirty work, and he was the champion who was above everyone. He held the title for about 9 months by not doing anything, by basically holding on to it, by being one of the more cowardly champions ever. It was a wonderful thing to see, but then we're leading into WrestleMania 21. WrestleMania is going Hollywood. So we get the rich conservative businessman versus the blue-collar rapper guy as your champ. And it's a great, great setup and a great, great thing. And leading into it, got some great promo work from the both of them. I distinctly remember one promo where Teddy Long had decreed that you could not, who's the general manager, they couldn't touch each other, otherwise the match would be off. And so John Cena spends the entire time touching clothes, snipping his tie, spray painting FU on his shirt, filling his hat with water, dumping it on his head. Great stuff. And managed to keep the battle rap going the entire time, which I thought was pretty cool. So that starts. That happens. We get to WrestleMania 21. He wins. He gets his first title, him and Batista both. And it came up at the same time, became big at the same time for different companies, and are now really reaping the benefits of that work. It was also around this time that you started to notice a few boos in the crowd for John Cena. People will point to that match against JBL. Not many people talk about it that much, even though it was the first time he won a title. They don't really talk about it because they don't really see it as a technical masterpiece. This is when kind of the reputation for John Cena not being able to wrestle really took hold, or really started to grow. It's because for two reasons, and I think that these are two reasons. One of which, yeah, but everyone else does it. does what number one is, and number two is a very interesting one that I definitely believe more than number one. Number one is that he has the same 5 moves and had these 5 moves for an entire, basically over a decade. You have the shoulder tackle, you have a giant shoulder tackle, you have the duck punch into the spin-out power bomb known as the Whirly Bird Special, go into the 5-knuckle shuffle, and then set him up for the FU, which again got added with an STFU as a submission move when the time would call for it. Now, people would gripe on him for that. People would also gripe on him for the fact that he would have he would do these matches where he would just get beat on and beat on and beat on the entire match, and then the last 5 minutes, 5 moves of doom, then he wins. And he doesn't look any worse for wear. People thought his cell game, his psychology, was not where it needed to be. They said the same thing about Hogan later on, but Hogan was still able to kind of incorporate the hulking up bit, that he was gaining energy from the crowd. John Cena just kind of flipped a switch and said, okay, now I'm not hurt anymore. I'm going to start punching you. That's basically what happened. And the fans definitely took notice, and they definitely didn't like it. It was also at this time that there was a major character shift within John Cena. The battle rapping started getting lower and lower and lower. He would do it less and less and less as the year of 2005 wore on. He would do it very less and less and less. And he would go up against perennial favorites like Christian, like Chris Jericho, like Kurt Angle that year, like Edge, and we'll get to Edge in a minute. But he would go up against these people who were so revered by the fans that they just kind of switched over and rooted for anybody that he was opposed to during the year 2005. So you see this character who had his chain gang and his big support. That support starts to go because he starts relying too much on the ending, on his 5 moves of doom ending of a match. He gets put against people who definitely do make him look good, but he's not perceived to be in the same level as. And the edge goes away. Not Adam Copeland. We're gonna get to him. Don't worry about it. We'll get there. But the edge goes away. He's not brash and dropping testicle references anymore. He's just kind of giving these promos about how he stands up and he fights all the time and this was the Marine had come out sometime before this, and he incorporated a little bit of military themes and love of support for the troops into his character. He would salute at the entrance ramp. He dropped wearing the chains. He just wore his dog tags. He would kind of give these promos that were just very generic, very nondescript. I mean, he incorporated comedy. He was always a great talker. He would incorporate a lot of comedy into him, but they weren't as brash as we knew that he could be, which that was the problem. And then you started hearing in the crowd, let's go Cena, Cena sucks. Let's go Cena, Cena sucks. The let's go Cenas usually came from, or started to, those voices were more high-pitched. So it was usually the women in the crowd, because he's a good-looking gentleman, I'm not going to lie, and the kids who respected his message. And then the Cena sucks was always much deeper, because it was men, usually in that 18 to 35 age range, who were starting to get sick of the shtick. Because gone was the days of word life, and here were the days of hustle, loyalty, and respect. And hustle, loyalty, and respect was not as interesting as word life. So that's where this comes from. And you saw it everywhere in that era. You saw it all the time. You definitely did. You saw it especially in his big feud with Edge, which began New Year's Revolution 2006. It was early January. John Cena survives a hellacious Elimination Chamber match with his title intact, only to be upstaged and completely surprised by Edge, who cashes in the Money in the Bank briefcase to claim his first title. And I believe that was still the title. I don't think anyone had taken it off of him up to that point. So he'd held the title for about 9 months, from end of March to the beginning of January. That's a long time in wrestling land. And that's a good amount of time for someone to get sick of you, like most of the fans eventually became. So when Edge did this, he cheered. He was cheered for this. for doing this. And then we got the sex celebration, and that's a whole other story for another day. That also leads me to another point about kind of why this shift might have happened. Back in the day, you have Hulk Hogan, who John Cena is often compared to a lot, often unfavorably, I might add. Hulk Hogan was a champion for a long frickin' time. I mean, from 1984 to about 1988, I believe he was champion. About 4 years, he held one title. And the reason why it didn't seem like that much of a problem is because wrestling wasn't syndicated. Wrestling wasn't nationally televised weekly. Then comes 1993. You get Raw. You get a weekly episodic television show, as they love to say on Raw these days, where wrestling is televised all the time. You get these people. You get to see these wrestlers every week. And sometimes you can get very bored of a wrestler that you see every single week, especially if that wrestler isn't doing anything different week to week to week. That's what John Cena. That's what happened to John. People got bored of him because of the overexposure, as it were. He was on Raw. He was drafted. He became the flagship of Raw, and he was always around. It really came to a head in 2006. This blew up for him in 2006. Because Edge was gaining popularity as the rated R superstar. John got his title back from him at the Royal Rumble, defended it against Triple H in a wrestling match / costume contest that everyone always remembers and laughs about to this day. It's very funny. And you get Triple H, and you get feuding with Edge, and get these great characters, and you get these great feuds, but John Cena was always presented as the good guy, but always hated for it by the fans. And it did not. The biggest example of this is 2006's ECW One Night Stand. This was the second ECW pay-per-view and the one that launched the third ECW brand. Now, there's a lot to say about the ECW brand, but one thing to remember about this specific night is the immense vitriolic, acidic hatred of John Cena by the ECW fans. Remember, this was an ECW-sponsored event put on by WWE and this ECW brand. Paul Heyman was a part of this. It was in New York City at the Hammerstein Ballroom, one of ECW's great hotspots. Pretty much given or attended by all ECW fans, the mutants of back in the day, and his opponent was Rob Van Dam cashing his Money in the Bank briefcase in for a legit match, not like how Edge did it. And it's just the reaction to him was so violently hateful. John Cena could do nothing right. There were signs hanging in the rafters saying, "If Cena wins, we riot." He would throw his shirt and his hat off, and the fans would throw it back. And he would throw it back to them, and they would throw it right back at him. They wanted nothing to do with him. Chants of "you can't wrestle," same old "shh," "you still suck," "F you Cena," rained on him like hail. If they were throwing hail instead of these chants, he'd be dead. Because he got so attacked by this crowd who just hated everything he did. Even though he was trying new stuff, he was giving them exactly what they wanted, but they still had a reason to hate it because he was John Cena. And this kept going throughout the entire match until Edge did a sneak attack, causing RVD to win. And it was a great moment for RVD, but man, John Cena was not having a good day that day, I'll tell you that much. Reigniting his feud with Edge, which eventually re-involved the WWE title, which also got the spinner treatment around this time. We're back in 2005. 2006, Unforgiven, we have TLC, with the stipulation, a TLC match for this title, Edge and John Cena. Stipulation that if Edge loses the title, or if John Cena does not grab the title, off the ladder, he must be banished from Raw and go to SmackDown, which apparently, behind the scenes, he was looking forward to doing, to kind of drop down to the mid-card and rebuild himself and kind of get that fan support back. However, even though that male demographic really could not stand him, the children were eating him up, buying his merchandise. This is around the time that he became the Make-A-Wish hero we all know that he is. So, and I don't really like to dabble in rumors, but according to different sources, he was refused that request, and he wound up winning this match. And you can kind of see it in his face. He looks very upset to be holding the championship, which I think is an ironic thing, because it was this title, this reign, lasted 380 days. The old modern record before CM Punk shattered it back in the day, back in 2012, with his 434. And this is where he started to really showcase himself as a performer, although the fans were still hating on him, because that's what you did. You hated on John Cena. He wrestled Edge. He wrestled Umaga. He wrestled Randy Orton. He put on a clinic at WrestleMania against Shawn Michaels. He even got the Great Khali for a little bit during this year. And still, the fans were not having it, because he was going up against really interesting characters, and he had not evolved at all. Then we get the fall of 2007, and he gets injured. He tears his pec. He goes away. He's expected to be gone for 7 months, pretty much up until the summer of 2008. But then we get the Royal Rumble, and entrant number 30 is Mr. John Cena, coming in back 3 months, 4 months earlier than expected. The fans could not believe it. They went ape crap for the first 5 minutes of his time in the ring, and then settled right back into booing him, because that's what Madison Square Garden does best. Eventually he won. Eventually he challenged Randy Orton and Triple H for the title. In a triple threat match, Randy Orton escaped, and he continued to remain a fixture at the top of the card. He would win the title a few more times throughout 2008, 2009, he moved to SmackDown eventually, wrestled against Edge in the Big Show. He would fight all of the major guys there and kind of be a thorn in whoever the general manager's side was there, because that was what we knew that he could do. He was a smiling babyface. And WWE as a whole made a genre shift to PG entertainment. Certain words you couldn't say. Then JBL comes back, and then we get the infamous JBL is poopy spray painted across his limo. Very different from when he spray painted FU on his chest. And the Attitude Adjustment became the name of that move as well. So now we don't have the only evolving that John Cena has done is not a personal evolution. It is a reaction to a company-wide evolution into a much more child-friendly product, which John Cena already was that, and now that part gets taken to 11, and the fans really don't like him now with all of this. There's still some that are happy that he can wrestle and doing all this stuff, but there's still a good semblance that do not want to see John Cena on their televisions anymore, or in their arenas. And this really starts to come in, because this is around the time that he begins to become known as someone who does not necessarily, it kind of becomes the barometer for a new guy. If a new guy can hold his own against John Cena, they're going to be just fine. If he can't, if the matches don't go well, or if John Cena doesn't like it, they kind of get shunted down the card a little bit. It happened to Wade Barrett with the whole Nexus angle, because the Nexus was red hot. John Cena gets a hold of him, and it becomes basically John Cena versus the Nexus. John Cena joins the Nexus. John Cena gets fired, comes back, keeps attacking Wade, and Wade hasn't really hit that main event spot since then. He's come close, but he's not quite there. The Miz kind of suffered the same fate. R-Truth suffered the same fate. Rey Mysterio didn't really have the opportunity to get to that same place. The only one who could really survive that was CM Punk. CM Punk had a fantastic feud with John Cena. I would say of his two best would probably be either Edge or CM Punk. Even though Randy Orton might be thrown up there, but they've wrestled so many times that I don't even care about that. But CM Punk is gaining even more momentum. He's already been World Heavyweight Champion twice through the Money in the Bank. He then becomes #1 contender to John Cena's title in 2011. right around the time that his contract's about to expire, and he wants to leave, and leave with the title. This was a huge storyline back in 2011. All of this culminated at Money in the Bank. Is John Cena going to prevail? Is he going to win? Is CM Punk going to take the title away? Is CM Punk going to resign? What does John Cena have to say about all this? Now wait, now John Cena was going to get fired if he loses too? This is craziness. What's happening? All came to a head in one of the best matches I have ever seen, a 5-star clinic that kind of put a little bit of faith back in John Cena, a little bit, because people were still in the Punk wagon, as they should be. Then that kind of gets, so CM Punk wins, leaves for a week, comes back, they have a big match at SummerSlam, champion versus champion. Who's the real champion? CM Punk winds up being the real champion. Cena does not stay too far away from the scene, a main event title picture, at all, feuds with Del Rio and Punk for the title, and The Miz is thrown in there as well. And then, TLC 2011, John Cena's nowhere to be found on the card. He gave his spot to Zack Ryder, who's having a phenomenal year that year. And the pay-per-view does pretty well. I don't know what happened next backstage, but 2012 became the John Cena show. Even more so than the other years had been, because John Cena, there were probably 12 pay-per-views that year, give or take, 12 or 13, and there weren't too many, there may be 2 or 3 of them where John Cena was not in the main event of those pay-per-views, whether he was fighting for the title or not. I don't know why that they felt like this. Whether it was a street fight against Kane, an ambulance match against Kane, Once in a Lifetime versus The Rock at WrestleMania, John Cena versus The Big Show, John Cena versus John Laurinaitis. There were all of these matches, and the world title was nowhere to be found in any of those until the summer, even though CM Punk was your champion, which played a lot of factor in a lot of his disgruntlement, but that's another story for another day. So you see this, and it's supposed to be the worst year of John Cena's life. Personally, he went through a divorce. It was terrible. Nobody likes when other people get divorces, even if it's hated public figures like John Cena is to certain wrestling fans. But this is also when his tendencies became kind of jerk-assy, getting a little too schoolyard bully against people like John Laurinaitis or Michael Cole, non-active performers, non-active competitors. And that aspect was always there. It really came out in 2012, and that's kind of turned people more against John Cena. And then he had this big redemption storyline, starting with winning the Royal Rumble 2013 and ending with reclaiming the WWE Championship from The Rock in their big WrestleMania rematch, which was a fine story, not a bad story, but just one that people didn't really want to have up to that point. Because the theory was you can't really create new stars if John Cena is always going to be at the top of the level. There have only been a few that really came out of that. CM Punk is one. Daniel Bryan is another. Daniel Bryan and John Cena had a terrific match at SummerSlam, which was John Cena's last match for a while he went to go get surgery on his elbow. When he comes back, he beats Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight title and immediately gets put into a feud with Randy Orton, the reigning WWE Champion, to unify the titles and create what we have today, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Now, was this something that people really wanted to see? Absolutely not. People wanted to see Daniel Bryan in that top spot. It was his time. They wanted to see CM Punk in that top spot. They still were holding on to hope that he could have that time. But nope, we got John Cena again. And Randy Orton, again, they had been feuding on and off since 2007, and people did not want to see it anymore. They let them know about it at the Royal Rumble in Pittsburgh in 2014. They really did. However, we got that, and then John Cena kind of became a little bit more down the card. He was feuding with the Wyatt family, became his big focus. And we all know how that went. That's pretty recent history. He won 2 of those matches, lost 1, and people say that Bray Wyatt never recovered. I think he's doing okay. But this is the reputation that John Cena does not win. If they go up against John Cena's always going to win because he's the company guy. He's the top of the company. The face of the company has to win all of these feuds. So when you get a Wade Barrett or a Mr. Kennedy or a Rusev or an Umaga or a Bray Wyatt or Kevin Owens. Hopefully this doesn't happen to him, despite the fact that he's lost twice too, that they kind of fall into obscurity after all this goes down. And the only person who could really upset this go was Brock Lesnar, who put on one of the most dominating performances in 2014. It was an amazing match, very selfless match by John Cena, which I think is something very cool to go off of. And then John Cena transitioned, after losing the title to Brock, into fighting the Authority, which your face of your company is going to go up against your big heel Authority faction. And that's exactly what happened. So, and people didn't really want to see him fight the Authority. They want to see Daniel Bryan fight the Authority or CM Punk. But Punk had walked out and then got fired, and as we all know. And then Daniel Bryan got injured. So he's the only one really left to do the job. But he still kind of remained up toward the top. Then he gets into a feud with Rusev, which is fantastic, and becomes United States Champion. The title that he won 11 years ago at WrestleMania 20. Now we're at WrestleMania 31. He wins that title. And now, after this win, this is when the tide about John really starts to shift. It's around this time of year. He starts having great matches with Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar. He starts having great matches with Rusev. He wins the title, and he institutes the U.S. Open Challenge, where a different competitor every week will get a shot at the U.S. title. He will defend it on television every single week. So we get, he starts showcasing all these amazing performers that we don't get to see all the time. People like Dean Ambrose, or people like Neville, or Stardust, or debuting Sami Zayn, or this new feud with Kevin Owens, or Zack Ryder, or Cesaro. You know, all of these people that fans want to see, and John Cena is giving them the chance to perform, and they are knocking it out of the park. John Cena's adding new moves. He's got a Hurricane Rana now. He's got a springboard stunner. He's got a leg drop bulldog. He's got a freaking sunset flip powerbomb, like a Code Red or a Mysterio Express, whatever you want to call it. He's got these moves now. He's expanding his repertoire. He's doing great things, and people are starting to take notice and say, maybe, okay, when he's given a big match, he knows what he's doing. This really started with Daniel Bryan in 2013, and it's really been built up and built up and built up. And people are really now starting to see, I think, him a little bit more in this way. But you can kind of see why it's taken so long for people to recognize this, because he was given the Hulk Hogan, shoved down our throats. All of the edginess that his character had as the Doctor of Thugonomics was stripped away into the leader of the C Nation that we know now. Some of that edge has come back, but it's more shown through in his wrestling ability. He's always been a talker. He's always been a supporter of America. We all know this. But now that his wrestling ability has kind of come up, so it's taken him 13 years to get to this level, which is okay. Some people got to figure it out. But now that he is here at this level, performing with folks who have an independent wrestling background, like a Sami Zayn, or a Dean Ambrose, or a Cesaro, or a Kevin Owens, people are willing to kind of say, okay, yeah, he's putting on great matches. And he's not the focus anymore. After Raw last night, that might be a different thing because of what he's able to, of him getting in there with Seth Rollins. But still, he's now a little bit less of in your face all the time. Now he's coming back up. He was down, now he's back up. He's not there the entire time. I think is interesting. So that is your history lesson, your Wrestling History 101 on the career of John Cena, how he got from no identity wacky roll-up guy in 2002 to the face that runs the place in 2015. Please let me know if you have any questions. There will not be a test. I do have some homework for you as well if you would like to do. I'll be reporting on your grades next week. Your homework is to watch any one of the 3 following matches that I'm going to name. And the network has all of these. I know. I checked. And you're going to watch ECW One Night Stand 2006, John Cena versus Rob Van Dam, to see the epitome of the John Cena hate movement. You're going to watch CM Punk versus John Cena at WrestleMania, not WrestleMania, Money in the Bank 2011, to see just how good of a performer he can be in a big match situation. And I'd also like you to watch, we're going back, we're going to go back a little bit. We're going to go somewhat into here. I'm going to give you another match that you might not think about. But New Year's Revolution 2007. Yes, going into 2007. It's the beginning of the year of 2007. He's fighting Umaga in a last man standing match. He gives a fantastic promo that contains probably my favorite line he ever said, which is "Lightning will shoot from my ass." Fantastic pre-match promo and a great match as well. So those are your 3 homework assignments. Let me know how you do, and let me know who you would like to see me talk about next. It could be another career retrospective like I did today. It could be an angle retrospective. It could be a company retrospective, a match retrospective, anything that you want me to see, anything you want me to talk about dealing with the history of professional wrestling. Any questions? Didn't think so. Class dismissed.